Hello. How's everyone doing today? How is everyone doing? I'm waiting on. Okay, now we are live. We are live on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. How y'all doing today? Good to hear y'all. All righty. We are here today with my wonderful co host, Corey. How are you doing today, Corey? With all the stuff that's going on. Yes, I believe you. Well, I know that when you do alert and oriented, you ask a person where they're at, what's their birthday. Sometimes, and a very popular question with that is also, who's the president? Maybe we need to come up with another question that what everyone may know. So that might be, yeah, we're gonna just have to leave the president out. Just ask them, what is your birthday? Where are we at right now? How about what's your mom and dad's name? I mean, they would know that, So yeah, so I definitely would not ask them about the president anymore. Not during this administration. LPNs are nurses. I think LPNs, we need LPNs. Um, and I think that, and they're not going anywhere. They shouldn't go anywhere. We need more nurses, and we need CNAs, and we need LPNs. I've learned a lot of things from licensed practical nurses. That's an LPN. And I believe that they are still needed in a hospital setting, in a nursing home setting. And there is room to grow. And also, all nurses have an opportunity to have a aspect of entrepreneurship. They can start their own practices. So I'm very supportive of having CNAs and LPNs and RNs. We need them. We need both of them. Well, let me tell you the path that I went through. I was a aide. I was an aide or a personal care aide through an agency. That's how I started. I also went to the military and I was a chaplain assistant, but I was at a hospital unit. So I had a lot of nurses who were there. And I wish I had actually went through a CNA program, and I wish I had went through a med tech program. So that would have made me a stronger student in nursing. And I also wish I had went through the LPN school when I was in high school. I, um, I was in between going to law school and going to medical school. That's what I was trying to pursue. And I have my uncle is a emergency room doctor, and he was like, "No, don't go to nursing school. Go straight to medical school." And at the time, it wasn't popular to be able to do those things. it wasn't very popular for nurses to go to medicine and vice versa. So my uncle was against me going to LPN school, and my family was, it was like, no, no, you should just, if you're going to go to medical school, then do all your stuff for medical school. And that's what I did. So I wish I had not listened. I wish I had went to CNA, med tech, and LPN school while I was in high school, and that would have made me a stronger nurse. Okay, then I would have went to RN school, or even I could have, been able to live comfortably while I was in medical school if I wanted to pursue medical school. But I think that there is definitely a need for CNA, med techs, and LPNs. Um, and we need those resources. We need extra help. We need people who can help at a hospital or nursing home setting. And I think we should not be limited, because registered nurses cannot run everything. And we need more people there to help. It's passive aggressive behaviors undercover. Well, I mean, back in my day, I have heard of some stories about, conduct when doctors are yelling and screaming, throwing things at nurses, charts, speculums, you know, um, any whatever they had, pins. I mean, I've seen and I've witnessed those types of incidents, and I have heard of some things that some nurses have done. I've also seen, heard of doctors going in to nurses in the break room and taking their food and throwing their food in the trash, going, "You haven't earned a right to have a break." And it didn't go well for these physicians, because these physicians had nurses who would go and do other things, such as, go into the doctor's lounge and take their food and throw it in the trash, or also, uh, take their keys, the doctor's keys, because sometimes the doctors come in and put their keys on the counter. And I've heard of doctors having their keys thrown into the biohazard box. Okay. I've also heard of a nurse who put her gloved hand in some diarrhea and patted the doctor on his back when he was in a tuxedo, in the break from his daughter's wedding. so, so some of these things, could happen. And I think that when you have somebody who feels powerless, because the doctors are the ones who bring the money into the hospital, but they also feel at times that, they may think they're the bosses of the nurse, or, maybe speak in a tone that's not as appropriate, even though their name is not signed on the check that a nurse receives. So sometimes, you're going to have passive aggressive behaviors, so they can let them know that this is not appropriate. I've also heard of instances where you have one African American nurse on the floor, the doctors are screaming and hollering, and they think it's perfectly okay. And then when you call them out on it, they're like, well, what is the problem? The problem is slavery is over. And if you have one African American nurse and you're always yelling at that person, and everyone else does not look like that nurse, it can be taken as a racial issue. And sometimes you have to educate the medical staff on, that looks racial. to the average person. If you're in a group and you're at work and there's only one person who's African American and you're yelling and screaming at that one person, it looks racial, and you have to bring that to that person's attention. I think that you need to talk to the manager. And I think on these floors, we need to start having conversations, maybe inviting the physician over for a staff meeting, and we're sitting down and everyone's talking about their concerns. What are some things that's going on? Back in those days, we never had those conversations. We never were given that opportunity. But in this day and time, I think that we need to start bringing everyone together and start saying, there's a list of concerns. You need to come up with your list of what you think is wrong or going on. And the other person needs to come up with their list, and they need to sit down with a medium, maybe the HR department, and start talking about some things they can improve on, and how, and also review people's perceptions, because, things are not going to go well if I'm feeling, that your behaviors are something that's racist, so if that's, so, and sometimes you have to tell people that your behaviors may be racist, may be perceived as racist. And when this physician was confronted with that, they were like, I don't think that what I was doing was racist. So sometimes you have to do that. You have to let them know that your perception of everyone else is that it's a racial issue. Well, I mean, this is new to me, because I don't practice anymore in a hospital setting. But there are a lot of Filipino nurses that are coming out, and sometimes I think that people who have already been there, it's a form. What's the problem is, you have the nurses who've been there 10, 20, 30 years on this floor, and then you have new people coming in, and they do this pecking order just like on any other job. You have a hierarchy, and the Filipino nurses are, I guess they're getting tired of it, because they're the ones that are doing the travel nurses. They're the ones that, in a hospital, they go through an agency and they bring a group of Filipino nurses from the Philippines to work at the hospital in different units. And they're tired of the way that they were being treated or being perceived. So a lot of the Filipino nurses are probably getting together and saying there's a problem. But this may be something they need to do with HR. Bring in a third person, and they need to sit down and start talking about what's going on, what happened, why, what are the issues that are going on. Because, maybe to them, some of the things that they're seeing or experiencing may be an issue of racial, or but with a lot of the nurses, anybody who comes who's not of the unit, who is not there full time, is always seen as an outsider. So if you have your per diem nurses, that means your per diem pool nurses. That is your per diem from another agency nurse. That's your agency nurses that are there for 13, 26-week contracts. And then you have the Filipino nurse who are there, they're travel nurses too. Or they may even sign a 1 or 2 year contract, because they're the international nurses. So the nurses who are on the floor, sometimes they have resentment because those nurses are making more money. Um, and you have, like I said, they want to do their hierarchy. You know, I noticed some of the issues I have when I have a home, what is it called? A independent living house. And I've noticed that residents and clients, they have a pecking order. They want to make sure they have been there the longest, and and things are going to be running a certain way. So that's with anybody. When you have new people, the person who's been there the longest, they have a feeling of certain entitlement, and they don't want things to be changed, or they want you to work with the way their systems. So those things do happen. Well, it seems like we have all these hospitals closing up. We're going to have to start, and we need more hospitals also. We're probably going to start having some government hospital ran programs. I think that we're probably leading to that, especially in the nursing home segment. The government is going to have to step in and start running hospitals instead of being in the private sector, because in the private sector, everybody is focused on profit. It's amazing to me how a hospital has a CEO that makes more money than the president of the United States. They're making $300,000 or more. So I think that we're probably going to be leading toward that in the future, where we're going to be having um, hospitals maybe run by the government, so we can keep those things going afloat. And they may be trying to put some caps on salaries in the future, because this is very concerning when hospitals are closing, and we need more access to hospitals and healthcare, especially in our rural communities. They're going to have to pivot. They're going to have to, go to another hospital. I also encourage nurse entrepreneurship. There are plenty of, there are over 30 types of entrepreneurial programs that nurses can work with. So I encourage nurse entrepreneurship. And remember, especially for African American nurses, we didn't start going into the hospitals until the 1960s. We didn't start going into the military, being allowed in the military into the 1960s. We were always independent contractors. So we have been dependent on hospitals for a very, very long time just for income. And I think it's high time we started doing independent contracting and starting nurse entrepreneurship. They have been talking about nurse concierge, offering your services directly, private paid clients, and assisting them, and coming up with your own way of doing your own health insurance and your own retirement fund. So I think that this is an opportunity for nurses to start looking into entrepreneurship. They we've always had that opportunity. We can practice internationally. We've, I mean, I have friends who've gone to different international, even islands. They go to do contracts on islands. They do contracts in Dubai. Uh, it's several places where they can go if that's what you would like to do. Experience different cultures in different places. There are international nursing staffing agencies that will help you. So I see nothing wrong with that. We have all these Filipino nurses coming over here, Canadian nurses coming over here. We have a lot of African nurses coming over here. They want to see something different, have a different experience. I mean, it's if that's what they would like to do, if they would like to pursue other areas, I mean, that's their right. I don't see anything wrong with it. Maybe, that they may need to be bringing that up to these hospitals and saying, our nurses are leaving. Maybe we need to make things better, give them more opportunities here. But sometimes people want to just, try something different. And that's fine. I see nothing wrong with it. If you want to practice in another country, it's your own free will. Well, we have more opportunities. I mean, if you want to work remote, I mean, I'm all for it. I have worked a at home job, with Medicaid, and I was at home 7 years, and I only had to go out to visit my clients 1 day a week. I mean, I loved it, but the paperwork was 3 hours per client, so that was a lot of paperwork. I also had to do a lot of telenursing, talking to our clients over the phone. So those are some of the things that you do. And I have friends who are also into well, I would say, well, telenursing. And, they love it. They like being at home and being on the phone and able to talk to clients, and they don't have to get out and run around. Saves on a lot of gas and saves on time. And you're still able to do some family things. I loved it. I love being able to, I had an hour for lunch. I took a nap. Okay. I loved it. So I love telenursing. Yes, I could take a nap, take a break in the middle of take a break, do some things, start dinner, have breakfast during my break time. It was very convenient. So yeah, and there's a need. You don't have to work in a hospital. There are over 300 careers in nursing. So choose your market. Well, number one, if you're at the doctor's office and they're saying something you don't know, and you need to ask them. She should have spoken up for herself there and said, "What do you mean? What does that mean? Idiopathy mean?" Instead of going home and putting it on the internet. I mean, you need to take some initiative about your own health. Um, we also a few years ago we have those medication carts that we put together and we push around, and they were called wows or cows. Initially, when they had the medication carts that the nurses wheeled around and we did our documentation on and we passed our medicines on, they were called cows. Well, some obese ladies thought that the staff was calling them a cow. And they sued the hospital, and that's how we had to change for the medication carts had to be called wows. And I'm like, that was something easy that could have been solved at the hospital if she had asked, why are you saying cow? It's the machine that you're pushing your medication, is your medication carts, and they called them cows when they initially came out. And I'm like, that was really extreme. She could have solved this whole problem when she was in the hospital and just asked them what was a cow. Why are you saying cow? And each nurse is assigned to their own medication cart during their shift. So that was, yeah. People take things out of context, and then they go to social media or they'll run to their lawyer instead of asking, exactly what was the problem. Or, I'm perceiving that people are calling me a cow here. Why? So those are some of the things, people have happened over time. Over 300 careers in nursing. Also, like, share, and follow. We need to start that out in the beginning. Like, share, and follow me so we can start talking about more things going on in nursing, and you'll be able to see the nurse styles, Nurse Linda and Nurse Nicole. And this is our signature book, N is for Nurse. It's an ABC book explaining nursing from A to Z. All righty. So this ends our first segment.